So this is going to be my second YouTube video. I made my first one 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was about my short thesis about the market crash that I've been working on for a while now. But that was really just a small part of what I wanted to do with this channel. I thought that was just a good video to start out with. I have a lot more stuff planned around the small account challenge that I'm sort of rebooting this week, and then some other weekly videos that I want to do, which is what this is going to be. This is going to be a weekly analysis video that I plan to do every Sunday, where I just do some analysis on the usual things that I watch, such as the S&P and the Nasdaq, and then talk about the calendar and earnings and just whatever I'm watching for that week. I plan to do them every Sunday. I am late on this one. I'm recording this on a Tuesday morning. I'm a little bit behind getting everything set up, but I want to get started with these, so I'm just going to do it one day late for this week, and they should be on Sundays in the future. And then, like I said, have other videos planned for things like trade ideas, maybe a video every Wednesday, and just whatever comes up and whatever I think might be a good video. And then, of course, stuff about trade recaps and the small account challenge and everything. I've been posting a lot of stuff on TradingView lately, and I still do plan to post a few ideas here and there, but mostly plan to move everything over to this YouTube channel and get a lot of videos uploaded and a lot of different weekly series going as well. So with that said, we can get into the analysis for this week. So the economic calendar is always very important to be aware of and keep track of each week. So I'll be talking about this every week in these analysis videos. Normally I will do these on Sunday, but I'm a little bit late this week, so I'm starting with Tuesday. So and another thing, I do like MarketWatch's calendar. There's a ton of different calendars you can do. I do have Financial Juice Pro. I like that as well. TradingView, investing.com. There's a ton of places, and I'm working on my own calendar too, so I can have a little bit more streamlined stuff. But for now, I'm just going to use MarketWatch. So Tuesday, I don't think any of this stuff is super important. Maybe job openings or consumer confidence will cause some volatility. And there's a lot of eyes on FOMC this week. I'm not sure it's going to really do anything, but we'll see. We do have the Powell press conference. I think the market's pretty sure what they're going to do, which is not cut rates in July, but most likely cut in September. So not expecting a cut at this meeting, and neither is the market. But maybe they'll do something crazy because of the weakening economy. I don't know. Some people think they should cut in July, but we'll just have to see. But I will have some trade plans and stuff for FOMC in the Discord and everything leading up to it. But for now, I'm just going to note it on the calendar and see where price is at before we get to that actual day. So that's going to be important. All this stuff can be somewhat important, especially PMI, with everybody worried about manufacturing and inflation and everything. And then Thursday, job loss claims is always important, as long as interest rates are important, and more PMI, ISM, all this stuff can cause volatility, but not like the biggest thing necessarily, unless it's like a big miss. And then for Friday, we have more just kind of jobs numbers, and that's really about it. So that's the calendar. So mainly FOMC and some of these other data releases, but for the most part this week, I think what's most important, and in the next couple weeks, is going to be mega cap earnings. So I'm going to talk about that next. So for earnings, I am also planning on making my own calendar and making some of these infographics so that I can really focus on the ones that I think are important, because there's always a ton of earnings, and there's too many to watch all of them. So I like to focus on the ones I think are most important, and I really like Earnings Whispers. They do a great job of posting the most anticipated earnings every week. So I'm gonna keep using this until I get something made myself. So like I said, missed Monday, so had McDonald's. I didn't even really see, but I have been actually trading that, but I did close my positions on that, so I'll have to check that out. But for Tuesday, we got SoFi before the open here, and that's actually just a few hours. That's usually a pretty high interest stock for retails, and it can be a big mover. I'm not going to trade it, but I think it's interesting. Had a lot of interest in PayPal this year. It's kind of been dead, but we'll see what happens. Definitely not going to trade any of these earnings. That's another thing I just say I never do. I don't. I shouldn't say I never do. I recently did trade. Sometimes I do gamble with small size, or sometimes bigger size, but that's not the way that I would recommend to make money. I think earnings should be avoided. You should never be buying contracts with high IV before earnings because it usually just does not end well. So yeah, so SoFi, PayPal, Pfizer, I've traded some of those this year. We'll be watching those. And then after close today, we've got AMD and Microsoft, Starbucks. Those are going to be the most important ones to me. I think Microsoft, obviously, Mag 7, Mega Cap is going to be the most important probably for the entire week. And then we have AMD that's going to be really important for semiconductors most likely. We might see a reaction in the whole sector. I'm not sure. And maybe Microsoft's not going to be the most important because we do have Meta, Amazon, and Apple. It's pretty loaded this week, so we'll see. I think all these Mag 7 will be the most important. Boeing will be interesting, and Meta after the bell. ARM is going to be important for semis with AMD, Qualcomm. Carvana is always interesting, so watching all of these. And then we get into Thursday, and we have more mega caps with Amazon and Apple. Intel can be important for semis as well. Coinbase, I have a position on that, so definitely going to be watching that, but going to be closing those positions before earnings, before close on Thursday, so I don't get wrecked by that. And I might actually be able to profit from an increase in IV over the next couple days with my position, so we'll see about that. Had a big fail on DraftKings earlier this year, and on earnings, I'll watch that one, but definitely not going to trade it. And then to close out the week, we have some oil companies with Chevron and Exxon, so we'll see about that. I'm kind of interested in what's happening with oil this year or right now as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Loaded with mega caps and gonna have a big impact on Qs. So I think we need to be very careful with what we're holding overnight and be aware of which companies are reporting when, because basically from Tuesday after the bell on, I think it can get pretty crazy because Tuesday we got Microsoft, AMD, and Starbucks, all very important for the overall market. And then after that, it just keeps getting worse, or maybe better, whatever you want to call it. And we have FOMC in addition to all this stuff. So it should be a pretty wild week. So looking forward to that. Going to try to avoid getting crushed overnight as much as possible and just stick to the reactions after the earnings, because I think there will be a lot of volatility and opportunity. You do not have to try to long or short before earnings and get lucky. That's generally not a good idea. So it should be interesting, and we'll see how it goes. I think there will be some good trades on Qs and SPY as a result of this. So pretty excited for it. All right, so for the S&P, I usually use futures the most. I like to use ES over SPY and SPX for the most part, but I do like to use both of them. And usually I'll just use SPY because SPY and SPX are usually identical, but I think SPX can be useful because it has like key levels such as like whole numbers. Earlier this year, we had a pretty important area at 5K on SPX that provided a lot of opportunities. So sometimes I look out for that, but for the most part, I just use ES and SPY. So this is a 4-hour chart from a little bit more of a zoomed out perspective. We do have the uptrend from April. This is sort of the major thing I'm watching for pretty much everything in the market right now, because all of these ascending channels we've had since April have been broken to the downside, and we got a pretty nice flush here after the break, and we're just kind of chopping. So we'll see if it's going to go back up for a retest or not. These arrows are for a different time frame. But one of my trade ideas for the week that I'll talk about is just to short at this trend line, so I'm going to be watching for that, but that's pretty far off. But overall, for the sort of the picture from just back from April, we are below this major trend line. We do have some consolidation here where we have been struggling, and you can see a lot of upper wick rejections here at 55.25, so that's kind of my most important areas for kind of the shorter term is 55.25 and then 5400 all the way below. That's over 100 points, but I still think that's going to be a great potential long spot because It's the previous all-time high from April of this year before we had the big sell-off, and when we broke above it and held it on a retest here, we got the big rally. So I would expect a retest to hold here, and then a retest here to fail, and then for shorter term, just try kind of looking at this 55-25 area to see what happens from there. So today is Tuesday morning, and we had Monday yesterday where I had some decent trades, and it was basically all based on this trend line and the 55-25 level, just for some intraday action. So we broke the trend early in the session, and that told me to be short. VIX was a little bit strong as well. But we held basically just below 5,500 and at a support also on a different chart, and bounced and went up for a retest and also failed there. So I took a short when we broke below, took profit roughly here, and then shorted it again on the retest and profit back at 5,500, and then we kind of rallied and chopped out into close and actually had a sell off in the last 15 minutes. But so far for the overnight session, we broke above this little descending wedge here and had a nice little breakout, and we're back up towards the 55-25 area, just above 5,500. So that's going to be kind of the range I'm expecting moving forward for the short term. Stays below 55.25, I'm looking for a move down to 5,400. If it's able to break above, I'm looking for a retest of this trend line. So that's that chart. Always have multiple charts because there's always a lot of different angles. And so for this 4 hour, I've been talking about this trend line. I think this is mission critical. This has to hold for bulls or else, I think. So this goes back to March. It had the nice breakout once it broke above, had this kind of blow off top rally. At least that's what I'm calling it, because I think this was a giant blow off top that got erased immediately, and if bulls cannot hold this trend line now, I think it's going to get a lot worse. And this chart's pretty nice because you can see we had this little channel break that led to a decent move down, another ascending wedge here that led to a gap down, and a move all the way down into this trend line that, you know, it briefly broke below, but it held. And when the trend line goes all the way back to March, you can't just expect it to work instantly, like on the first minute. You can see that it can go below, it can go back above. It's not sure necessarily which way it's going to break yet, so you got to kind of give it some time and see what happens. So right now, watching 5,500 and this trend line. If this trend line gives, I think that's looking pretty bad for bulls. So going to be important. And then, of course, if it can get above 55.25, that should lead to a decent move up, I would think. So important for that. And then, like I said, I like to use SPY a little bit too with ES. And it looks very similar. So the uptrend from April is the same thing. It gapped below, basically gapped right on the trend line, and then continued lower. And then also had a little ascending wedge from May that it broke below here and led to a nice flush. So always looking for these trend breaks, because that's what's most important in my opinion. Always be aware of the shorter term and longer term trends and making sure that you're trading accordingly. And this could change drastically by the end of the week with FOMC and mega caps, but this is what I'm watching right now. It could go either way for sure. We're seeing a lot of consolidation right in here, and I think we'll get a big move whenever it does finally decide to move. And it's kind of been in the range of 542 to 547. So looking for that to break before I get too excited about any crazy moves. And just like ES, we'll be looking to short on a retest of this trend line, because it will be the first retest. I think it would most likely work. We'll have to see. And then, of course, if it does break below 542 and keep going below these lows as well, this 524 area is very similar to 5,400 on ES. So that's going to be kind of what I'm watching for the S&P moving forward. All right, so for the Nasdaq, same thing with the S&P. I like to use the futures. I use NQ and Qs as well. I can use NDQ, much like SPX at times, but mostly prefer the futures and Qs. So short term for NQ is very similar to what I just showed on ES. So I had a nice little ascending channel slash bear flag, you could call it. Nice move down, ascending move up, and then once it broke, it led to a nice flush. It did kind of have a fake out here before eventually moving lower. But you can see this has been consistently failing at 20K. It failed here once it finally broke below. Again here, a couple times here, and then again, like, I mean, just every time it goes up to 20K, it fails. I see that as quite bearish, and that's kind of my line in the sand for bulls and bears right now. For the shorter term, or actually, sorry, this isn't even 20K. This is 19.3K. My bad. 20K is all the way up here. We've already fallen well below that. I'm so used to 20K being important. Sorry. Anyway, we're below that, so that's what I'm watching moving forward. I see this as bearish below this, and the fact that it broke this bear flag did have a nice little descending wedge break, but we'll see if they can get any momentum after the open today. And then if we like zoom out on this chart a little bit, you can see very similar to ES as well. Uptrend from April has been broken, led to a nice flush, and kind of held at this 19.3K area where we had some previous consolidation and demand here. Demand actually did not hold. It got a small bounce, but got broken to the downside. That's why I don't have it on the chart anymore. So that was interesting. That's more weakness. I see the fact that demand did not hold. So looking to see if it can break above 19.3K, and if it can, I'm looking for like a fail on a retest of maybe these previous lows here. I think that could be a good area to potentially short, along with a retest of this trend line and supply here. It already rejected from supply once before breaking this trend line, so we'll see if it can hold again, but pretty far off of that. So right now, just with the wedge break and the support break and the bear flag, have to be bearish for kind of the shorter term. And then also have this other chart here that I think is also very important. So this is a pretty major ascending wedge here for NQ back from October of 23 at the lows and July of 23 at the highs. And again, this was another what I consider to be a blow off top rally that I've been talking about, where I thought it would fail here and we just go down to the bottom end of the trend, and that did not happen. We had the big breakout above. We even got a nice retest here. It actually took several days, and this is the key 20K area that I was thinking I was talking about earlier, but this was a huge area, and you can see just several days a week just relentlessly chopped at 20K. Could not go above it, could not go below it, just kind of sat here, but we were holding retest of this trend line the entire time, and then eventually got the huge blow off before kind of failing and immediately erasing the move. And that's why I think this is really bearish, because it's a huge fake out, huge blow off top rally, and I think that pretty much marked the end of the entire bull market, if you ask me. I mean, I'm not 100% on that. Obviously, I'll trade whatever way the action goes, but that's what I'm thinking for now. And you can see that once 20K did break and we got the big fake out here, it came all the way down to the bottom end of the trend. It actually did not quite touch it, but got very close. So I just think that's another indication of how important these trend lines are, because we had a 2,000 point free fall on the Nasdaq that occurred over like a week's time, and it would look like it would never find a bottom, and then finally did right at the trend line. So critical moving forward. If this gets to the downside, I see that as even more bearish, in addition to the big fake out up here, and am expecting quite a bit more downside if that happens. And that's kind of my whole thesis right now. But until this trend is broken, we're not gonna have the big sell-off. So I'm gonna be looking out for that. Have a lot of Mag 7 and big cap earnings that could affect things. We could break this and flush even lower, or we could go all the way back up to the top and retest 20K. We'll just have to see. And then for Qs, pretty similar, obviously. Ascending wedge back from basically April lows and then January on the top end. Respected this pretty well. Had a little bit of a fake out above right there in early July, and then had the big move back down all the way down to the bottom of the trend, and then even broke that as well. I thought it might bounce here at this previous high, but it did not. It just kept going down. We even had this this trend line as well, which was an uptrend from June, and that didn't hold either. It did hold on this trend line from April a little bit, but then after a small bounce, ended up gapping back down below after closing back on the trend line. And that's what you'll see often. Price will close on these trend lines, and they will gap down and above the areas, and that's how you know that they're important, and just kind of been a free fall ever since this trend has been broken from April. Like everything else that we're going to see, thought it might hold at 468 because this was a gap fill, but it did not. It kept going down and actually failed on a retest here and another one here. So still see that it's quite bearish, and then we also have a bit of a bear flag here. So for short term today, for Qs, with everything I showed on NQ, that as well, but mainly going to be watching to see if it can hold above this trend line. That's just from really a few days ago, and if it can get back above 468 or not. And that's going to determine my bias. So if we do see the trend break, that's quite bearish. I could see it moving all the way down to 450, which is kind of the previous high from here where it bounced and then had the big breakout above. So very similar to ES, and I think honestly it's a pretty good setup. It should be fairly easy to trade if we don't have a bunch of fake outs and stuff, because we have some very specific areas that are important, and we'll know which way to play based on where price goes for these areas. Okay, so on to the VIX. If you follow my analysis, you'll see that the VIX is incredibly important to every trading decision I make, and I'm always looking at VIX. I like to use the futures over the cash index, and you can also use UVXY. UVXY and the VIX futures are essentially the same ticker. They're pretty much a measure of shorter term volatility, like over the next 5 to 7 days, whereas the cash index is a 30-day measure of volatility, and I just don't think it's as reliable. It can have a lot of fake outs and get pretty wild, and it's harder to analyze if you ask me. A lot of people say that you can't do TA on the VIX because of about the futures. They say, oh, it's a decaying asset, and the cash index, they say a lot of what I just said, where it is fairly unreliable. But I think with the futures and UVXY, you can get a lot of really great information. So always have multiple charts for VIX, and I'm usually watching only the futures rather than the cash. So for the futures, what I'm watching is this major trend from September of 23. There's a lot of trends that go all the way back to like 2022 and October of 23. But this is what I'm watching right now. So we had the lower end here that had been holding since December, and then this one from September. We did have the one fake out in April where it looked like it might actually start to come to life again and maybe go back to more how it was in 2022, but that quickly failed. All of the war speculation hype and stuff died down, and we just had the huge rally after bottoming out in April, and VIX continued to die. It's what I would consider to be in decay, and that's why I've been so bullish throughout the year up until now, because this thing has just been completely dead. And when this thing is dead, you just don't get sell-offs. That's just a fact. It can't be any other way. One of the few things in trading where this is like an actual like leading indicator. It's not really a lagging one. It's, of course it can explode like 25% in a day, but for the most part, when VIX is elevated, you see a lot of volatility, you see downside, and when VIX is in decay and just dying, you see a lot of upside and chop. So important to watch. And so we had the fake out here in April, and then another rejection shortly after, and that was kind of the end of the sell-off, and VIX just kept trending down, and up until recently it had just been completely dead, and that has not been fitting with my short thesis. I've been doing a lot on my a lot of content on my short thesis lately, and more on that in different videos and stuff, but the thing that doesn't support the short thesis at all is the dead VIX, and I usually would never short when VIX is dead like this. That's kind of against my rules, and I paid for doing that in June and shouldn't have done it. And now we're seeing VIX try to break out again. So we'll see if it can continue the strength, but for now it had another hard rejection. We had this little downtrend from May that it did break out of, and had a big sell-off, and then had the retest of the trend here. It did go back below. Sometimes it can overshoot. It did have this little uptrend too that it held, and that's kind of how VIX goes. It'll overshoot a little bit, but usually it's pretty good. And it did bounce here, and then that's how we got the big dump on the Nasdaq, we had that minus 3.5% day, and semis sold off a lot, and it was looking quite bearish. And I showed all the major trend breaks, but VIX did not keep going. It failed at this trend line once again, just like it has every other time. And now I would say it's kind of neutral, right? Like it did break this trend. It's still holding. It's maintaining strength, but it is back below 16. The 16 area is kind of most important to me for short term. And if we get downside, I would expect a bounce here at like the 15 area or this trend line potentially, because that would, well, it already retested once, so we'll have to see if it can again. And then if it's able to get above 16 and get moving up again, the target is just this trend line to see, you know, what happens there. If it can break out of the trend line and make a new high, then I'm just going to be watching these previous highs, and ultimately it's going to need to reclaim this high from April, or any sell-offs that we have are going to be short-lived. So I think this trend line is super important, and the 15 to 16 area is very important as well. And I have this other chart as well. I mean, they're all pretty similar. There's not a whole lot to say, but this is kind of the same thing. This is a nice chart though, because we had the uptrend break here, and it had a really nice retest, and that led to a lot of downside, and now it's been in a downtrend, but it did recently break out. However, momentum has been stunted, even though it did hold on a retest here. It's kind of right around the 16 area, and I think that's going to be key moving forward. And this will probably change drastically after we get done with mega cap earnings and FOMC this week. So important to keep an eye on. And like I said, don't like the cash index too much, because I don't think it's great for like shorter term analysis, and it's hard to read. However, we do have a really nice trend line here from January of 2022. This is super long term, I would say. I mean, 2 years is quite a while. You can definitely do longer analysis, but that's usually you get substantial movement when trends that last over 2 years break. And you can see every single time it has failed. It has tried to fake out above several times, like it did in 2022, and then has just been basically straight down since. Had the spike in 23 in the banking crisis of March, and then failed hard. Same thing in October of 23, had a little bit of a sell-off in the market, but eventually just failed hard before trying again in April after the war. Another fail, and then another fail again just last week after the Nasdaq and semi sold off. But right now it's sitting right on the trend line, so very critical going straight into FOMC and Max 7 earnings. And there's a lot of things on the edge right now. This is going to be super important. VIX is on the edge, S&P, Nasdaq, they're all on the edge. Semiconductors, and you know, we'll have to wait and see what the direction is. But if this thing is able to break out and take out this previous high from April, and then just, you know, keep going up and taking out these highs and get back to like 2022 levels, well then where you could say like, okay, we're in a real bear market now. We're getting a lot of volatility. VIX is elevated for a substantial amount of time. It broke a 2-year trend. That's proper bearish. But until that happens, you know, there's really no reason to be super bearish just yet. But we do have the makings of what could potentially be a big breakout for VIX. So going to be very important to watch moving forward. So I usually just watch for like my main market analysis. It's the S&P, it's the Nasdaq, VIX, and lately it's been crypto. I think crypto is really important right now with the potential change from using Bitcoin as a reserve currency for the United States and other countries, and potentially getting off the US dollar. And I think there could be a lot of opportunity in the future. So definitely think it's important and worth watching. I'll usually talk about the Dow or the Russell, but for this week, I'm really just focused on big tech and the S&P and crypto. So I really like this chart. This is a longer term chart for Bitcoin. I've talked about it, so I won't go over it too much, but you can just see we have this trend basically back from October of 23 that we were holding above, had the break below, had the bull flag here that we broke out of, but ultimately failed on a retest of this trend, and had kind of a double top here and a lot of downside. But you can see it bounced really nicely on the retest of this bull flag. It did once here, but then had more downside. And not only was it testing this bull flag, it was testing this trend line back from October of 23 as well, and then also this major one all the way back from, I think, I don't remember where it started, back in 2019. So very important major bottom here, I would say, bounced right on this trend line, tried to break this uptrend from 23, and very short-lived. It bounced pretty much instantly and went on this big run. And now it's kind of stalling out here. It was not able to quite get back up over 70K. I think maybe it touched 70K, but it did not go over, and was not able to make a new all-time high yet. So I expect upside, especially as it's holding this 66K area. So we'll see if it can bounce here and continue up, or if it's actually going to turn into more of a downside move. I'm pretty confused about this. I don't know what's going to happen to Bitcoin, honestly, if stocks tank and we keep like pumping Bitcoin. I'm not sure. Usually it has tanked with the Nasdaq, but now I'm thinking maybe it'll be kind of decoupled. So I had this ascending wedge break here that led to some downside, but it was kind of short-lived. We had this trend line as well that it briefly broke below, but really quick bounce, reclaimed 66K, and then went on the nice run. But I had a pretty big dump here all the way back to this area. It did bounce nicely yesterday, and it's kind of hovering right above it today. So that's pretty important, and we could probably extend this trend line out too and see that it has not been able to hold above that either as of now. So really just watching this 66K area and looking to see if it can actually go up and take this high out, or maybe we have quite a bit of downside if it cannot hold. And then I have this other chart too. It's pretty similar, but this is a bull flag that has been forming on Bitcoin since March, so like a few months, and has not been able to break out above. Has struggled every time, including this one. It's kind of retesting it right now, but it has held really nicely on the test of the bottom end. And if it does break out, I think it's going to be pretty substantial. So really want to see this get moving for my coin longs right now, and if it doesn't, I'll probably have to exit. But yeah, this 63K area is really important too. This would be, if it broke below this would be a new lower low, which would be pretty concerning for bulls, I would think. So bulls definitely do not want to see this area get broken, in my opinion. I think that would be substantial more downside probably, and then if it does fail here, it could bounce here and maybe eventually go on to break out. So just got to watch here. I think this trend line is really important though, and this bull flag is important for kind of the medium to longer term action. So we'll see how that goes. And then just wanted to talk about Ethereum real quick too, because it had a huge flush. I had an idea about this one on TradingView. It was retesting this trend line. It did have like a fake out below and a bounce, but eventually it did break and led to a really big move down, although it did find support here at these previous lows and is trying to move back up. So we'll see how that goes. Right now it's kind of got this uptrend that if it breaks below, that could lead to another move all the way back down to 3K or so. So we'll see about that. I don't usually trade Ethereum much, but I do watch it with Bitcoin and coin. I don't really pay attention to alts. So I like the Coinbase chart as well, and I'm long this. I took a long yesterday. I don't like the way it closed on Monday, but we'll see how it goes today, and if I have to stop out or not. So I was watching coin. Had a nice bull flag breakout. I thought this would continue a lot higher than it did, but Bitcoin stalled out, and coin eventually ended up with this like ascending wedge that broke to the downside, and but it was able to hold the uptrend still. Had a couple fake outs below, but ultimately it did hold, so it's still looking pretty bullish to me, especially with Bitcoin going up. This was a trend line back from August of 22 that had been resistance that led to a big breakout when it did break, and so far it's been holding really nicely. Another big area for me is this 235 area. So that's been some pretty important horizontal support back in the past, and then it was resistance here. It's kind of been like gapping up below it and then moving back down. So I think it's It's pretty important, but ultimately this trend line I think is the most important. That's pretty far away. I'd really like to see 235 hold here, and then also this trend line as well. And I think if Bitcoin can rally, coin can hold here and have a pretty big run, potentially all the way back up to these highs. It's a very quick mover, so that's why I like to trade it. But if it does not hold this 235 area, I'm gonna have to stop out of my longs, which is fine. It happens. We'll just have to see how it goes. So to wrap up, I will go over the Mag 7. I usually am watching what I'm showing here with ES, Nasdaq, crypto, VIX, and Mag 7. There's other important sectors as well that I'll often watch depending on the week, but for this week's video, just going to end with the Mag 7. Sometimes I'll talk about semiconductors or maybe commodities like oil or gold and silver, but yeah, just trying to keep these videos to the point and keep them organized and easy to kind of watch and get some ideas from. So always open to feedback though. If you have anything that you want me to change or cover, or maybe if you think the videos are too long or too short, like what you prefer, I would appreciate any feedback. You can comment on the video below or join the Discord and post in the suggestion box channel. I always like to have feedback so that I can improve and make this stuff better, because that's the ultimate goal. So for the Mag 7, so I have an idea on my TradingView profile about the Mag 7 collapse that I posted a while back, and it was based on this ascending wedge and a lot of other TA that I thought looked very bearish at the time, and it ended up working out pretty well, and we got a lot of downside, so we'll see where we go from here. But for the Mag 7, this is all the tickers combined, kind of like a mini ETF that I like to use, that you can just, with TradingView, you can just put plus signs and add them all. So anyway, ascending wedge from April lows, much like everything else, broke below. It did have a breakout above and this big blow off top, which again, very bearish. You can see it on all the charts. It did have the breakout above, but it did fail on this trend line that goes back to April as well. You can always draw the trend lines different ways. It's a bit of an art, but I'm hoping to kind of show how I do it and what works for me. So again, big fake out, blow off top, and now it's below the major uptrend from April, and it's kind of consolidating back here in this area of previous consolidation. It did have a pretty big move below, but it had a quick bounce, and now it's kind of in the middle, if you ask me, between this wedge and then support down here at these previous lows. So interesting. I think it could definitely go either way based on this chart. I also have this one as well. This is much like the Nasdaq and some other charts I've shared. So back from 2022 at the top end and 23 at the bottom end. Pretty long term. This is really from like basically December of 22, January of 23. So it's been a couple years, and had been respecting the trend very nicely, but had the big breakout above, big blow off top, and immediate erase of the entire thing, and now it's back below the trend that it broke. Not only that, it is below support that was here that held pretty well, and broke below. Now it actually went back for a retest and failed. You can see the two upper wicks here on the 4 hours. So much like everything else, it broke the major trend and then it bounced, but it is struggling to reclaim like some important levels. So very important for mega cap earnings this week in the Nasdaq and everything, for this to see what this does for direction moving forward, because right now it seems very bearish for me. If this is able to reclaim this trend line and keep going up and maybe fill this gap, then that's obviously looking much more bullish, and this could be a fake out to the downside. But for now, it looks like it's going to be bearish and move back down to the bottom end of the trend. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. And I'll go over some charts for like the individual tickers. I'm trying to get like this video out. It's already a day late, so I'm just gonna cap it here. I have ideas for a lot of these. We have earnings for a lot of these coming up this week, so you got to be very careful. I wouldn't really recommend trading any of these, but I do think it's pretty important. So just real quick, here's Apple. Had the ascending channel break and broke support as well. Had a bit of a bear flag here that it broke, and now it's just kind of in the middle here. So don't really feel great about trading it, especially before earnings, but 225 to 212-ish is kind of like the range. You could say this is a bit of a bear flag, like we see it on a lot of things here. We had the big move down and now the consolidation, so we'll see if it wants to break to the downside or upside. I think it could go either way, but for now, I think most things look bearish. I think Microsoft looks quite bearish as well. Another example of a big blow off top above 430, which was a previous all-time high, and the instant fail. It did bounce on the first retest of 430 here. Decent little bounce, but was short-lived. Had the big move down, and now it's back below 430. And on top of that, it has a bear flag too. So this is not looking great, if you ask me, at least for kind of the shorter term. The fact that it's below 430 and then also broke below the bear flag and failed on a retest before close. We'll see if it can open above or below. For now, it's looking like it's going to gap below. And that would lead to a lot more downside, I would expect. But we do have earnings coming up here today after the bell. So gotta be careful with this one. For now, I think the range is essentially this 430 level all the way down to the lows here around 417. And we'll have to see what happens on earnings. But if you zoom out, overall still in a big uptrend, pretty bullish, but until it can get back above 430, I would kind of expect to move potentially all the way back down to this like 397 or 400 area. Also, this trend line I think could hold as well if it did get down there. Maybe it hits both at the same time. That would probably be a good long for that. Nvidia I think is important. Let me show this other chart first. So it had the ascending wedge break and pretty bearish. Another ascending wedge here and another one here. They've all been breaking to the downside. It's really lost a lot of momentum since topping out here. And what I see as important right now is that it's below 118. And until it can reclaim that, I can't be bullish on it. Had the big gap down here and the move below. It was able to hold at 106, was like a gap fill here, but until it can actually start seeing some upside, make some higher highs, this is bearish. It's it's been one of the strongest stocks in the market, but the trend right now for recent times is basically straight down. So no reason to be overly bullish on that, if you ask me. I thought I had another chart actually, but I guess not. Anyway, that's oh wait, this is the wrong one. Is that why? Sorry, let me go to the other one real quick. I thought I had another decent thing to look at. Yeah, so this is the one of the ideas I posted a while back whenever I saw all these ascending channels and megaphones being broken. Nvidia itself had several, so the uptrend here got broken to the downside, had a bounce, but then ultimately broke this trend line from May as well, and then had the gap down and broke the one from April. So losing a lot of momentum. All the uptrends are being broken, and it's just been continuing down. Had support around 116, 118, and failed. It did hold at 106, but it's smack in the middle right now. But overall, all these trends are broken, and it's bearish if you ask me. We'll have to see it reclaim this like 116 to 118 before I can be bullish on it, and then even then, I would expect it to fail on a retest of this trend line if it did go all the way back up there. If it can break 106, then my next target is the gap fill here at around 96. So that's Nvidia. Meta, I think, has been great to trade this year. I haven't traded a lot recently, but I think this chart's pretty good. So we had the uptrend that got broken below, big gap down on earnings, but it did hold here on this trend from all the way back from April 22, and then this one is all the way from October 22, where it was like way low, all the way down to like $80, and then just had the massive rip all the way up over 500, went up like 500% in a couple of years. So that was nuts. But so far it rejected on a retest of this trend line, and it was holding this like 492 area, but that broke as well, along with this uptrend from April as well, and it bounced nicely here on this trend all the way back from November 22. So expecting that to hold for now. We'll see how it reacts to earnings, but it's kind of in the middle now. Like we have resistance at 492 and then trend line support below. So waiting to see which way this thing's going to go. Tesla, I've been talking about this a ton. I think this is a great potential trade. I'm actually short right now, but it might not work. So we had the big uptrend from, or sorry, big downtrend from the all-time high in November that had failed every single time and led to huge sell-offs. But eventually it finally did break after like a huge short squeeze all the way down from here at the April lows. Um, and the reason why I'm short is because it had this big breakout and it looked really bullish. I thought this would be a huge run all the way back to all-time high eventually after seeing this trend break, but it had the big gap down below after earnings and looked like it was going to hold below. So that's why I was short going into today, or sorry, Monday. And it gapped up, had a big 5% day, but I have a lot of time on my contracts, so I stayed in them, and I'm waiting to see, what's going to happen with mega cap earnings and everything to see if this is going to go all the way back up and fill this gap and finally break out and keep going, or if this whole thing was a big fake out. This looked like a big fake out, looked bearish, but so far it has reclaimed the trend line for now. So I got to be careful with this one. I think it could be a huge move. It just needs to make its move off of this. It needs to decide if it's going to break above or below here. Amazon, same thing with a lot of stuff. Short and simple on this one. Uptrend from November is broken. I consider that bearish, so I would expect downside, but it could be a fake out. We'll see what happens with the earnings on that. Google is another one. Uptrend from May of 22 got retested, not quite, but had a bounce here after falling below this ascending channel that had the big flush. So still bullish, I would say, like definitely longer term as long as it's above this trend line, and then it could even hold at like 150. That would still be bullish as well. But we'll have to see how it reacts. This doesn't have earnings until later. Yeah, not until, does that say, oh yeah, October? Or am I missing it? Sorry. Oh yeah, they already had earnings. My bad. They had earnings last week. So yeah, bullish for now if it's above this trend line. But we'll see if it can make its way back to 150 or go back up towards all-time high. And then Netflix is not a Max 7 stock, but it's still a mega cap, and I like to talk about it. So uptrend from April 22. Rejected off the top end and this previous all-time high as well. And then the bottom end has been holding, but we'll see if we can get the move all the way down to the bottom end, or if we'll see another test of this like $700 area. But for now, this trend from January is broken. It's had some fake outs, but I would expect to move back down to this lower end here as long as it doesn't quickly reclaim. This is another one that has already reported earnings, but it usually has a lot of weight on the Nasdaq as well. So yeah, that's the Max 7. Gonna be watching semiconductors. I like SMCI too, but gonna talk about this stuff in another video. Gonna wrap this one up here with that one. So that's what I'll be watching for the week moving forward. Lots of stuff going on, lots of earnings, lots of FOMC and other economic events. So should be good. I'll be doing more video updates on other things like semis and other trade ideas and stuff, but this is going to be the weekly analysis video, and I'll try to do these every Sunday from now on.